Alright, so this tutorial is by request. There was a gentleman who was watching my quick speed workflow through on the Earth planet that I was creating and didn't quite understand how I was able to make a whole environment of stars and stuff. So this tutorial by request is just going to be about environments. So let me break it down. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to tutorial scene. So everything. Alright, we're on my desktop now, and this is After Effects 2021, as a matter of fact. So there's like 2 or 3 different ways we can go about doing this. I'm going to start a new composition, and then I'm just going to do like a HDTV. Okay, we'll do 1080p, 24 frames per second. It doesn't exactly matter too much, but alright, so I've got this background here, and it's a background of a city, so it is a 360-degree seamless texture. So in other words, when you load it into like a sphere or something, it all connects, all 4 sides connect together, and it's seamless, so that you have like this whole background. It's just like a full, you can turn the camera 360 degrees and not see a line in any of the design in the picture. So to illustrate, I've got a new comp here, and I'm going to set up a new composition. I'm going to call this environment. And on the environment layer, I'm going to load up a plugin by Video Copilot. It's called Orb, or they call it VC Orb, and it's actually a free plugin that you can download for After Effects. I'm going to type Orb, and this is basically what I use to do everything with. I create my for a space scene. I will add layers up on top of layers. So there'll be like one orb will be the illumination for the planet, one orb will be the diffuse for the planet, so basically the entire texture map of the planet. Another layer on top of that will be like the clouds and whatnot. And then another layer on top of that, which will actually be the layer that goes underneath everything else, is the environment. Okay, so to do the environment, what I'm going to do for this orb is I'm going to turn everything but the diffuse down. So you got this glossiness here, don't really need that. The specular map, don't really need that. And the reflectivity, so you don't have anything reflecting inside that texture map. So everything that you load on here for a texture is basically done via layer. So if I want to add an environment texture to wrap around an entire sphere, I'll need to move a texture map or the picture of what I want, like a picture file, into the comp as a layer. So I'll move it down. So you got this layer here, and it's got and it's a 4K texture, so it's big enough to handle most situations. For now, what I'll do is I will turn off that layer, and then I'll go to environment, and I'll go to the effects controls for it. I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to call this the camera, and I'm going to make it 35 millimeter in Z space. And then with that, I can actually hold Alt and I'll have controls like a camera. I just move around and zoom in and out. So I will actually hold the middle click button, position it, hold the right click button, and I can actually zoom in. So that way I can actually see what I'm doing better. And then in the effects panel for oil, I'll click maps and I'll choose the diffuse layer as the third layer, which is the skyline JPEG. So, and then that will load, and now I've got this sphere with this 360 degree seamless background here. So you notice as I zoom in, it's kind of like on the outside of the sphere. So I have this like thing. It doesn't really do much. I can't really make anything out of it because everything is like on the outside. So my first step is I'm going to go to advanced options and I'm going to click the unlinked, check the unlinked, and what that'll do is that will make it the same. It'll make it completely unlinked, so it'll be like it won't have any shading or any lighting or anything like that, and the brightness and contrast will be based just off of what I have in the layer. So if you notice, it's the same exact lighting and everything. It's just the only difference is it's wrapped around a 3D object, which is like a 3D ball with a 3D sphere. Okay. The other problem, or the other issue that I once ran into, was that when I zoom in, and I thought, well, I may be able to get away with this. It's like I needed it to actually to be an environment. I needed it to be opposite. I needed it to be inwards instead of outwards. So I noticed one thing, that if I zoom in to the point where if I get close enough to the sphere, the camera actually ends up on the inside of that 3D sphere. And then I noticed there was a section over here, this little setting here called surface, and it's set to front. And what happens is, when it's set to front, the texture map on that 3D sphere, or on that 3D object, will only show on the outside. Because when you look at a 3D object, any 3D object you look into and you go to the inside of, it's hollow on the inside, no matter what. So you have these lines and these vertices, and let me switch over to so I can explain this a little better. Okay, so basically, it's these little vertices, these little dots, okay, and it's like connected dots. So there's lines that connect each dot. Those are lines, and then the dots are called vertices. So by each count, you have, and it's kind of, and it falls into like, I don't know what they call geometry or whatever. But when you have four vertices, four dots, and then you have four lines connecting each dot, so that's like a square, or even three dots to three lines is like a triangle, depending on how you have it set up. It's like a square, and each square is got its own wall, and each wall, each full triangle or square that connects to each other adds more walls, and the more walls you have, and that's where the the 3D object is created. So when you have like, say, when you want to create like a sphere, and you have like 4 walls wrapping around each other in a circle, and then 4 walls going up this way, and then 4 walls going sideways in all ways, and it connects, and the geometry of each vertice creates a sphere. Each line that connects to each other, and then there's a wall between each line, so you have like this sphere full of walls. And on the outside of the walls, you can add your own pictures, which in turn create a texture. So, in short, you could take a whole 3D, 360-degree environment and wrap it around that entire sphere on those walls. And so that's how that works. So now I'm going to switch back to tutorial scene. Right, so now we're back here, and inside it's completely black, completely hollow on the inside, but there's no texture map showing on the inside of it. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to take that surface setting and switch it to matte. And so now what it's doing is it's creating, you can visually see the texture map on both the inside and the outside of that wall. So if I go back on the outside of the 3D model, the 3D sphere model, so it's on both the outside and the inside. So now when you zoom back in, and make sure I'm back on the inside. Yeah, so switch back to back. And actually the radius of the sphere, which is how big it'll be, I can actually tune that up from like 200 to 2000. And now when I orbit around the camera, we have this 360-degree environment that doesn't have any lines, any cutoffs. All 4 corners of this this thing connect to each other. So you have this. You can even go to the top and you can see the sky. So it's all connected. So you have your own environment there, and you can actually add your own. You can actually add your own 3D objects into the scene at that point. So the other thing is like if the texture map seems a little too big and you can see like pixelation in it and stuff, and you don't want that, what you can do is you can increase the UV size. What the UV size is it creates repeats of the same texture, so you can actually drop down the size of the texture and add more detail to it. So what I like to do is I'll go down to the UV, and on the repeat x-axis of the UV, which is this way, which is horizontal, I like to increase it twice its size. So instead of 1, I'll do 2. So as you can see, it's kind of shortened. It's kind of like squished it together and made it more. And because it's seamless, I can add as many tiles as I want to without having to worry about any seams. But they have to be exactly numeric. So it can't be 250 or 325, because then you will get like a line in that. You'll get a seam in that type. Unless you're in a spot where you don't have to worry about it, and that's fine. And you notice how the buildings inside the texture map, they look kind of long now. So what you'll have to do is sort of compensate. And what I mean by that is just take the Y repeat and tune it up just a little bit. And you'll notice when you look down, the seam is like cut. And then when you look up, you'll see it's kind of stretched. But as long as you're not looking completely up, or if you don't need to look completely up in your project, then it's not much to worry about. If you just need like from here to about here in the sky, that's perfectly fine. You can even add just a little bit more if you wanted. I like to go roughly about 120, and then I'll have something set up here so you can't see this, and I'll have it to where I can animate through and not have to worry about what's up here. So I have this little environment here. But let's say I want to make the sphere just a little bit bigger, so I'll maybe go from 2,000 to like 10,000 maybe, and then that way I've got this little thing here, and then I can just go anywhere I want to in this scene without having to worry about it. And you know, and then that gives you a little extra because Video Copilot has like two different versions of this. They have the Element 3D version of this, which is a little bit more. It costs money to get that. It's like 200 and something bucks. It's a little expensive. Orb happens to be free, so I mean you could use this version for your products, or you can, you know, load 3D models and then have an environment map in the background and just a UV setting inside their settings that way. And at that point you could add your 3D models in Z-Space and have an environment to follow in that background in the exact same order in the camera settings. And you can also set up the environment to where all the reflections match everything that's going on here. And with Orb, with it being a 3D object as your background, the textures off this can bounce the reflections off that 3D model in Ray Trace. So if you want ray tracing reflective elements in your reflective materials, say like if you were to set up a building with windows, with reflective windows, or you have a 3D car or a 3D aircraft with windows that have reflective material on them, you can bounce that reflection off this map here and get ray tracing from that, which I think would make things look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to illustrate that really quick, so I'm going to add another solid layer, and I'm going to call this 3D. And on that 3D layer, we're going to add element, which is Video Copilot's element plugin. So it's loaded up, so what you'll have to do is you'll have to go to Scene Setup. And then I have a number of different 3D models. I have a Jet Strike pack from Video Copilot as well, so I can go in and find like an aircraft that I can use just for illustration purposes. So maybe the tactical fighter one. I could go in here and I could take a look. The window's got some reflective material on it. And at that point, if I want to change, there's like an environment that reflects off this. So if I go into environment, this is what's reflecting off that window. I don't really want that. I kind of want it to match the scenes. So I'll go into load from file. And I will look for, actually if I go, you're getting a peek into what's on my system right now. So, let's see. Materials, Metropolitan Skies, and I look for the exact one of Gold Skyline, right? And so I have this environment now, and if I take the UV repeat X up to 2 and this up to 120, so it's exactly the same in a sense. And then you get this environment that's reflective of the same manner. And that will show up in that, and if you switch it to, so you have this. See, you notice how in the camera it shows the inside? Bam. You got this little guy here. Yeah. I could choose to turn him off and have just the cockpit alone. I can have him inside as part of the reflective material. And then what I'll have to do for element is I'll have to go into render settings, Retracing mount, switch it from opaque to sample, and turn the sample up to about 8. And then that way there's reflective material coming and bouncing off of that orb, and I can actually hit scene setup. It'll load one more time, but it'll only load so it updates, and when it updates, and then I can hit OK, and then from that point you can see it just sort of, you can't see it too well, but I mean it's there. It's there. So and then you have like, so you have this environment, and then you have like a, aircraft in 3D space, that kind of thing, and then you could just start building from there, So that's basically, the easiest example that I could show you. And like I said, 90% of the graphics and the rendering that I do are not of an expensive 3D modeling program like 3ds Max or anything like that. Or even Blender. I don't even use Blender, but like 90% of my go-to animation is Adobe. So I use Adobe After Effects. I use Photoshop, not for my photography, but I use Photoshop for designing texture maps and texture material to load onto a 3D object or to use as an environment. In that retrospect, for photography on Adobe channel, I use Lightroom, and Lightroom is basically like a lighter version of Photoshop because I don't do any effects in Photoshop. So if I wanted to do effects, say photography for example, and I wanted to do something crazy with just one single still image, I would prep the image in Lightroom, and then I would move that image to Adobe After Effects and do my effects in there, because it works the same way as far as resolution goes. You can set the resolution size to match the exact resolution of the picture and then work within After Effects to create my effects. And it's the same with video. With video, I'll prep everything inside of either Final Cut Pro or Premiere, and then I'll move it to After Effects and I'll finish up my compositions from After Effects. I mainly only use Premiere, Adobe Premiere, when I've created like a set of graphics to create one full scene, and each graphic that I record, each visual effect that I create, and they're, let's say 5-10 minutes long, and then each 5-10 minute video is set to connect with each other in one full 30-minute to 40-minute animation. Then I go into Premiere because it's easier with Premiere to line up all my videos, edit them, get them set up to where they're all connected, and then render out the video. And when I render out the video, I actually use Adobe Media Encoder, so I can get the right. So I can encode the right video encoder, and use the right video encoder to compress my videos. So yes, they are compressed, but I only do it to the point where it's not affecting the quality at all. So you'll still get full like HD quality or even 4K quality from what I got. And so with After Effects, if I'm rendering out my graphics in After Effects or my visual effects, I'll do the same thing in Premiere Pro. I'll hit export and use add to Adobe Media Encoder. And I'm showing you something a little extra here just to, throw it out there. So it's Media Encoder, and then it'll automatically it'll save a copy of the entire project. It'll save it to a file, like an entire project file, into a different folder. So and then it takes that project file and it renders from the project file. So I can actually, so instead of it rendering from like a video and then trying to like a 1080p video and then trying to upscale it to like a 4K, which doesn't work, it'll take whatever's in that comp and the resolution size in that comp from that project file is like 1080p, but I want to switch it to like 4K, which is what I have up here. It'll take the composition size and remap the the composition size to a 4K resolution. So it basically renders out the project file versus a copied video and saves it in 4K quality. And I have it, the 4K thing, the 4K quality setting, and the encoder that I use is H.264, of course. Everybody uses it because the compression is great. So it compresses the file size to a point where it'll save you a file size room. The file will not only be easier to work with, but it will keep the exact quality you had as before. Or if you decide to use 4K, it'll take that composition size that's in here. So like if I go to composition settings, composition settings, and it says right here 1920 by 1080, that's 1080p. So it's HDTV 1080p, 24 frames per second. What this does is it keeps the same apertures, it keeps the same frames per second, so it'll be 24 frames per second. The only difference is the source will come from 1920 by 1080 to a full 2160p 4K. It'll just readjust the size of the composition instead of encoding into a video and then recoding it and upscaling it, which will drop the whole quality drastically. But not only does it do that, it compresses the file so it's smaller, but it's also easier to work with, and I'm not losing any. As a matter of fact, I'm gaining quality because I'm switching the composition size from 1080p to 2160p 4K. This is exactly what I did on that cube animation that I did too. So it worked. I mean, and it helped. It helps a lot, tremendously. And then when I'm ready to do here, I'll switch to like my desktop or something. I could change the file name as I'm compressing it. So I could actually change it to maybe the file name to like 1 or something like that, and then hit save. And then it saves it as its own video. And I'll just hit the play button and it renders everything out. Last one took me 18 minutes. There you go. I hope that helps you guys out a little bit. I mean, I tried to explain everything as I could. I know I'm not the best speaker in the world. But, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, you needed help. So I tried to explain the best I could so you could, you know, you'll figure it out, hopefully. And also about Video Copilot. They have a website. You go to videocopilot.net, and then you can go in there and, you know, they have filters and plugins that you can use for free. Actually, yeah, the other one is the effects console you saw earlier that I was playing with. I could actually switch over to back to tutorials here really quick. You notice in here, this is my hotkey. This is a hotkey. I think it's the default hotkey. If you hold Control and hit spacebar, you'll see this little console that comes up. Okay. On a regular setup, you'd see on the sidebar here that there would be like effects and presets panel that you'd hit, and it'd take forever to load. And then you'd have to type in search or scroll down or scroll through the list of different effects. With this, and this is also downloadable from Video Copilot. It's also free. You just type in, you go to their website, type in effects console, and I could actually, like, I can hit my 3D layer, effects consoles, and let's say I wanted to add a glow effect. So I hit Control space. And it'll come up with the effects console. Let's say I want to add a glow effect, so all I can do is type in glow. And it'll be right there. And I can just hit it, and it will load that effects preset. And then I can just, you know, play around. Yeah. So, yeah, okay, that's all I want to show you for now. So go to videocopilot.net, check out their stuff. And happy creating.